The Third War, Part 4. Hello, nice to meet you. I was on top of Eric before I recalled the room going black, only to be cold with water. I was nearly foaming at the mouth and had no idea where I was. I tried to open my eyes and then I woke up strapped to a bed in a cold room. I was nearly nude, and I began to scream when James came in. He stood in the doorway for a moment and seemed almost scared of me. I was now confused. James slowly came over and sat next to me. "Are you feeling any better?" he asked. I sat up, but realized I was immobile. I was tied to the bed. "You had a very strong reaction to my visitor, Eric. I had to restrain you." "Oh," I said, trying to understand why I felt so strange suddenly. I no longer felt safe with James, but I didn't understand it. "You shifted completely at the sight of Eric. I've never seen anything like it. Luckily, I had the strength to stop you before something worse happened. If it's okay with you, I'd feel better if I could keep you here for a couple of days. Maybe run some tests." "James, why are you so afraid of me?" James gulped. You were the single most frightening thing I've ever seen in my life on this planet. You were not just any wolf. You were the wolf. I had Eric leave immediately. I still am not sure what to do. If you can't control your shift, you could get into some serious trouble. I could get into some serious trouble. There are rules to this type of thing. Suddenly I understood. I didn't like what I was hearing, but I understood. I stayed with James, but only lasted a day or so before he let me out and we resumed our normal routine. I drove home, much to his and my own fears as to what might come, but I needed the normalcy. James gave me strict instructions to lock up my house at night and to see no one. He was afraid that someone might hear of my abilities after Eric left so abruptly from James' house. I was never the best listener. It wasn't more than a few hours until I was on my way to the grocery store. I knew it was risky going out like this, especially while I couldn't control my own shifting abilities, but I went just the same. I pulled into the parking spot and noticed a tall man walking with a cane. I got out of my car and eyed him. There was something about his gait. He didn't seem like he could even walk with the cane. I didn't want to interfere, but then I saw a woman open the store front door and not hold it for the man. I began to feel infuriated at it. I began to shake again, and then I closed my eyes. Not now, not here. My hand stopped shaking, and I ran over to the man with the cane and opened the door for him. He stood up at me, smiling. "Thank you, young lady. Nice to see there's still kind people in the world." Then he stopped, smiling. "Are you okay?" I asked him. The man said nothing, and said he hurried on into the store away from me. I finally got a good look at myself when I caught a reflection in the store window. My eyes were silvery with an amber glow. I blinked, looking at anything but myself. Instead of shopping, I went back to my car, put on my sunglasses, and drove home. I'd order a pizza instead. I felt sorry for scaring the kind old man. I instead made my home secure-proof. The windows were finally completed. It seemed like they would never finish the mechanical metal devices to cover my windows. They were installed to keep out the other wolves, but I had to say I no longer feared the other wolves. I was the wolf, according to my grandfather. The feeling left me with an unsettling feeling, though. I had them install steel doors leading to the basement. I put cameras in every room of my house. I never knew what chaos would come to my door, or rather, when. I needed to be prepared for anything. I even had devices that could blow off your arms just by putting these little teeny tiny pins on someone's body. I had James help me by securing an entire contraband of weaponry made to kill these werewolves. This was war. How much longer could this feeling of isolation last? The next few days I avoided work, avoiding going out, and avoided phone calls. One call came from James asking me how I was feeling and if I were up for company. I hated ignoring him, but I didn't feel much like having to make excuses for why I felt so disconnected. I stayed in and watched old movies. You know, the kind that were black and white and romantic. I barely paid attention to the plots. I kept thinking about how much I missed my old life. How much I missed Michael. I was dozing in my comforter when suddenly there was a knock at the door. I stiffened. There shouldn't be anyone here at this late hour. My hands shook, and then I slowly stood up from the sofa, tossing my blanket to the ground and trying to see who was outside. I smelled him first. It was strange that he should come here and come now. I looked out the window and then unlocked the door. I looked up at Michael as he stood in the rain. His eyes were soft, and I knew he was alone. I could have smelled the others if they had come. Without thinking, he kissed me on the lips, and I let him. I didn't stop him when he undid my shirt, pulling the sleeves down from my shoulders. I didn't stop him when he kissed my neck and caressed my skin. I didn't even try to stop him when he finally had my naked body under his. I let him lay there with me all night long. By morning, he was still there, and for a moment I could forget that he had become something of a nightmare. This was just a childish dream to me. He was merely a memory. Things would never be the same. Michael, you need to go, I finally said to him. I know, he said, surprising me by not attempting to argue. I had a nice time, I said, not even attempting to lie to him. I could feel you longing for me, in that old way. I'm sorry. I know, I said. I don't think you understand, he said to me. No, I do understand, I said, pulling out a taser and tasing him. He passed out, and then I tied him up so he couldn't move, and then I drug him into the basement and locked him away. I knew the others were coming trying to find me. I welcomed them. I would kill every single one of them. I would kill them until they were removed. I'd keep going until I was free, until Michael was free of us. I went to the garage and got in my car. I still needed to make that trip to the grocery store, especially now that I was feeding 2 people. I opened the garage with a push of a button, and when the garage opened, there stood 4 men. I took a deep breath, understanding what needed to be done. Putting my car in reverse, I backed out of the garage as fast as I could. I looked at them scrambling to get up after I ran them over. Instead of stopping, I put my SUV in drive and then ran them over again. I knew it was not easy to kill a werewolf. We had amazing healing powers after all. This just felt good. It felt justified. I smiled as I ran them over a 4th, and then a 5th time, finally leaving so I could get my shopping done. This time I got my groceries and didn't panic when, as I left, 2 of them tried to stop me outside the store. We know you have Michael, one of them tried to sound intimidating. I kept on walking, ignoring them. They seemed shocked, and they didn't know what to do. I got my groceries inside my car and waved to the 2 individuals outside the store. You see, what they didn't know is I had brushed up against them and put one of my little micro-explosives on them. I watched in the rearview mirror as their heads exploded from my body. Their blood spilled on the walls and the sidewalk outside of the store. There was a woman shopping for plants outside that unfortunately, she's going to be scarred for life. I wish I could say I felt bad for that. I only cared that this time they would not fuck with me. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed one of the men that I had ran over earlier was still lying outside my garage. I got out of my car and rolled him over so that I could fit my car in. Once inside, I closed the garage door and then unloaded my groceries into my house. Once I had done that, I went back outside and looked at the man still laying on my garage floor. He wasn't dead, but his friends must have assumed he was, and that's why they left him. I had to admit my handiwork was pretty lethal. I dragged the man into my kitchen and sat him at my breakfast nook booth. I poured a glass of brandy, chugging it, then pouring a second glass and setting it down in front of him. Well, I know you're not dead, and you're not crippled. Have a drink with me. You're fucking nuts, he managed to mutter. I'll give you that. Why are you here? Let me guess. You want Michael back. He was last seen on his way to see you. We know you have him. I do, but guess what? I'm not letting you fucks have him back. He's mine now. He's my husband, after all. I think it's state law that he's my property or something. But I also have you. Tell me, what should I do with you? What's your name? Dan, he said, finally grabbing the glass of brandy. Dan the man. Well, you're not going anywhere. You're going to help me. Bullshit, he said. I grabbed his hand and then bit off one of his fingers. Dan screamed loudly, and I shoved his own finger back into his mouth. Dan, do not fuck with me. I'm faster, stronger, and meaner than you could ever be. I'm the new wolf in town. Best you bow down and show me some respect. The pure look of fear now was inescapable. I looked at him, realizing my hands were shaking. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror just above the fireplace. My eyes were that silvery amber again, and the smile on my face was that of a beast, an evil beast. My teeth were long. My soulless eyes stared back at me. My body had begun to shift into full-blown werewolf, but I stopped it. I stopped myself from changing. I took a deep breath and looked down at Dan. Okay. What did you say? I growled at him. I said, okay, I'll do whatever you want, just don't kill me, you crazy bitch. No, we don't call people names in this house, Dan. You'll be right to understand that. Dan nodded as the blood from his finger coated his mouth still. Go clean yourself up, then we'll discuss your payment. Dan looked at me, then around the house, now holding his finger in his hands. It's the second door on the left upstairs. Dan ran up the stairs, and as soon as I heard the shower running, just so he wouldn't try to escape, I shut down the house so he couldn't open the window and jump out. This was all nonsense to everyone else in my life, not to me. This was only the beginning of the Third World War.